Good evening. Welcome to the final lecture in our Friends of the Working Men's Institute 2023 lecture series. Boy, we've had some great lectures this year, and we're going to wrap it up with a humdinger. At any rate, just welcome to you all. We have snacks. I hope you will have an opportunity to get some of those. Please know that your Friends organization has been hard at work putting together our 2024 lecture series, and it's all finished. We're just going to dot the I's and cross the T's, and you're all going to be hearing about it real soon. At any rate, at this time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Jacob Mumford so he can introduce his dad. Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote this in the tractor this afternoon, so we'll see how it flows.
Remember, we did not come up with a bonus yet for this fall. So remember that.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Working Men's Institute, Ryan for helping us get everything set up, and Jeannie for asking me to introduce today's speaker. Bish Mumford, my father, has farmed in this area for the past 40 years. The son of Thomas F. Mumford and Tish Sinclair Mumford, who many of you probably knew, who in their own young adulthood left lives of comfort in Indianapolis to return to the old family farm. He's the youngest of 6 siblings, and it's my understanding that he never expected to be a farmer growing up. He attended Dartmouth College, where he was particularly involved in the outing club, and grew a strong appreciation for the outdoors, which is not to diminish the love of animals from his mother, Tish. He returned to the family farm amidst the farm economic crisis of the 1980s and took over a nearly failed farm with little to no mentorship, his father having died when he was in middle school. And in the intervening years, he not only survived and overcame the trial by fire of saving a family farm, but has also become a deeply knowledgeable and experienced voice in agriculture in the New Harmony area, and has a long and impressive career. It's been a career of adversity and success, of experimentation and resilience, and as a result, his resume is pretty remarkable. He has had his hands in forestry and livestock management, as well as row crop agriculture. He has been active in local and regional conservation, sitting on the Posey County Soil and Water Conservation District Board, and he is a life trustee of the Indiana Nature Conservancy. He has a vast knowledge of plant and soil science, born out of necessity because of the ground that we farm. It's by no means an easy plot of land. His business sense, grown from 40 years of managing a farm largely by himself. He, along with all farmers of his generation, have witnessed profound shifts in the technologies and economics of agriculture. He is an avid bird watcher, and in fact called me as I was writing this to tell me how he saw a short-eared owl from the combine this afternoon. In addition to his agricultural work, he still has had the time to be involved in the local music scene with our family bands, and especially through the Under the Beams concert series. I've spent my entire life listening to my father's wisdom about these things, from back when I was riding along at the combine as a kid, and still now as I work on the farm with him, which I've done for the past 5 years and up until about an hour ago, since we've still got about a day's work left to do until you're finished with harvest. I watched as my father juggles and balances the intricacies of a business that many people think is simple. I have watched him implement every method of farming, from high-tech modern techniques to the tried and true, or to make a radical experiment in the back corner where no one can critique, all in the face of unforgiving conditions on our backwater little piece of dirt. A rugged pragmatist, and yet an idealist and a forward thinker. Never one to be content with the status quo, never one to back down from a debate, always curious but willing to stand up for his ideals. All of this together make me very excited for you all to be able to hear his talk this evening. So, Thomas Mumford I first came to New Harmony in 1836 to teach at William McClure's School of Manual Labor, and it is only appropriate that now, 188 years later, his great-great-grandson would be lecturing here at the Working Men's Institute. And on that note, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you all today's speaker, my mentor, my boss, my breakfast table debate partner, but most of all my father, Bishop Mumford.
All right, thank you, Jacob. That was very nice. This is tough because I know most everybody here. And you guys all know me, so if I get too far out of line, I'll probably be called out. That's fine. I've got proof checkers in the front row, in the second row, all kinds of people. But I'm also excited because I see a bunch of politicians in the room with us tonight. So, is it not the case? Aren't politicians supposed to, like on election night, to like have all sorts of good cheer to help, get
free drinks? Is that what you're going for?
Okay, afterwards. But anyhow, okay, so I am Bill about talking about farming in the 21st century in Posey County, precision, sustainability, profitability. Those are kind of catchwords that are out there floating around these days, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things. I've been pretty busy of late. Maybe we'll see how, I've got a lot of thoughts in my head, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a conversation tonight. Farming, what we're talking about, is kind of like, in my opinion, it's like the old story about the blind men describing the elephant. Everybody's got an opinion, and everybody, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa, because even within this area, I can look around and see a lot of different farmers that I know, that I watch closely what they're doing, and I see a lot of successful farmers doing exactly what they want to be doing a good job, taking care of their farms, taking care of their land, taking care of their families, being successful, and yet each farm is individual and unique in its own right. So my thoughts are my thoughts, and I guarantee you could go out and find 10 other guys or ladies here in the county and come up with 11 different ideas on a lot what I'm talking about. So anyhow, as we go along tonight, like Jacob said, I've been at this for a while, and I've kind of got just some thoughts in my mind, and so that's what we're going to, kind of be talking about. Some are not. I'm not going to dive into real specific details on how many this and how many that, because I'd rather talk about ideas. That's what this here is about. So anyhow, and also maybe later on tonight here, a good friend of mine, and Jacob said, about how my dad passed away when I was young, and I kind of tried to figure this whole game out on my own. And I did have some people that helped me out a lot. One of them sitting right up here in the second row, my buddy Frank, who farms out here. And so Frank is a top-notch conservation farmer here in the area. He farms all the Indian Mountain farms. So you guys have all seen his work for years. You probably, some of you know Frank, some don't. But Frank's going to maybe step in and help me if I get in over my head, or if I get too far out of line. He'll at least tell me afterwards. So anyhow. So, okay. First of all, farming here. I've had the good fortune, as many of you have been out to our farm out in Griffin. It's been fun. I've always said I would have hated to have been a farmer up in some of that flat, black, beautiful farmland up in central Illinois, because it's like big square fields that you grow corn on one year and you grow soybeans the next year, and that's all you do. Now, granted, they're growing 300 bushel corn and 100 bushel beans. That'd be awful nice, but I've had the good fortune up there where I live. We've got a very diverse landscape that I've managed over the years, and that has flavored a lot of what I do and the way I look at things, because we've got farmland. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. It all used to flood by the Wabash River. We've got levees around it now. We've got farmland. We've got grasslands. We've had livestock. I grew up, we had 200 beef cows running around up there when I was a kid. We got rodeo cows up there now. If anyone's been up there lately, that's kind of a unique thing. We've rented it out to a guy that, sad state of affairs, but you make more money with scrawny old cows with big horns that you rope than you do with beef cattle, but that's a whole other story. We have forest. I've thoroughly enjoyed. We have 500 acres of woods behind my house, and we've actively managed that over the years. And so with that, there's been a whole recreation business, outdoor recreation business that we've been running for the last 40 years. We had minerals up there. There's been oil and gas in our, anyone that lives in this area knows there's oil and gas in this part of the world. There's coal under us. So I've spent a lot of time talking about that stuff. Here of late, it's been kind of interesting. We've been talking about some renewables out there as well. So I've had a crash course in the last year in solar stuff. There's a big solar project that they're talking about bringing in up in, more in Gibson County, but up in our way. I know they're talking about it in the South Indian County. So these are all land uses that are going on out there. So when you talk about farming, to me, farming is not just going out here and growing corn or growing soybeans or wheat or what have you. It's using land and using land for a lot of things. And like I said, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to have sort of a multi-use land base. And honestly, that's kept it interesting. It keeps it fun. It opens the door to things that you might not think about. But so that's when I talk about farming, I'm kind of talking the whole big picture, because that's what I've been able to do. So step back and take some big picture things here right off the bat. The first thing, and when you get right down to it, everything we're talking about here, 99% of what we're talking about is from one chemical process called photosynthesis. And you all, I'm sure, know what photosynthesis is, but you know, biological process used by many cellular organisms to convert light energy into chemical energy, which is stored in organic compounds that can be later metabolized through cellular respiration to fuel the organism's activities. Okay, the sun shines down on leaves, you know, the chloroplast, if any of you took biology classes years ago, and it turns it into starches, it turns it into corn, into soybeans, into wheat, all these different things. It's kind of fun to think about, is that, you know, everybody says, oh, well, what about, you know, we burn coal and oil in our houses to keep warm. Well, you know what? That was all photosynthesis from however many millions of years ago. You know, you got nuclear power, you got wind power, you got some of these things going on, but 99% of what we're talking about these days is coming from photosynthesis. And we, you know, that's just the way it is. The other thing that we got to talk about when we're talking about this whole business is how many people there are on Earth. Because we're in the business of feeding people, among other things. I mean, if I was a cotton farmer, you know, it'd be obviously, you know, keeping you in clothes or, you know, things like that. But our primary thing that we do a lot of, and we've been doing this for the last 10,000 years, is feeding people through agriculture. And, you know, just to get an idea, right now, November 2023, they said that we just turned over roughly 8 billion people on this planet. Okay, so 8 billion people, 10 to 12 billion by the end of this century. 10,000 BC, which is, you know, sort of when they start talking about, that's when agriculture, you know, they start talking about starting up in Mesopotamia and all that good stuff. There were roughly 1 million people on Earth. As opposed to, what did I just say, you know, 8 billion now with a B, 1 million 12,000 years ago. 8,000 BC, 5 million people. That's the same as if you took the population of Finland today. That's how many people were on the entire planet, everywhere. It was interesting in the year 1 AD, there were 200 million people. And they said 1 in 5 lived in the Roman Empire. I thought that was kind of a fun little trivia thing. Yeah, but you know, they were farming back then. There's some great farm books that came out. Cato the Elder, I believe. There's a great farm book from that era. 1800, there were 1 billion. By 1900 to 2000, the population quadrupled. Now, I saw this chart, and you know, kind of goes along and whoop, goes right straight up like that. And basically since about 1900. A couple of things that are interesting to think about. One thing, again, going back and talking about this, if we talk about photosynthesis, you talk to any farmer and they're going to talk about NPK, NPK, NPK. That's our language. Nitrogen, phosphate, potash. Those are the 3 things that it takes to make our plants grow out here. And we live and breathe NPK. Before 1900, the nitrogen, which is the main thing that you need to make plants grow, I mean, we're talking about night soil, to use a delicate term for an indelicate topic, manure, you were talking about growing clovers. It was all this grab what you grab here and grab there. And they said in about 1850, they discovered there were islands off of Peru where they had guano, bird poop, let's call a spade. And so anyhow, by 1890, they dug it all up because they figured out this was this dry desert island that had all these seabirds and had guano. So they were using that, and that was the main nitrogen source. And they said in about 1890 or so, and I was reading this, they said some chemist stood up at a big meeting, and he said, people, we've got a problem. We've got to come up with a way to get nitrogen. Because otherwise, the population's starting to go up, said, people are going to start to starve. We've got to have nitrogen. Now, you'll know what I'm talking about on this one. They said in where was it, 1909, this was one of the major things that has to do with agriculture today, was the Haber-Bosch process. And I bet if I'd asked about the Haber-Bosch process, I bet I could know one person that hold their hand up about that. And okay, so the Haber-Bosch process, what is that? So the Haber-Bosch process was two German scientists who came up based on this call for this in 1895. So they said, we've got to come up with a way to come up with the nitrogen. And this was how they came up with how to make anhydrous ammonia. And they take natural gas, and they take natural gas, primary source of hydrogen, and it also is the energy, because you take nitrogen, which is in the air, and anhydrous ammonia, you heat it way up, pressurize it. Am I halfway being right on this? And
You're close enough.
Close enough. Anyhow, long story short, suddenly you've got anhydrous ammonia. And I can remember people talking up in Griffin about the first people that were pulling anhydrous wagons. Daryl Farrar talked about this. You know, he had a business, he had a little dinky little tank, and they go around, it was this miracle thing. You put on corn and it grew, turned green and it grew. And so there was like a six-fold increase. In 70 years, there was a six-fold increase in the production of corn in the United States. Primarily, it was on a website put out by the nitrogen people, so they were taking claim, but they said it's primarily because of that. And I think that's a safe thing to say. And so nitrogen and anhydrous ammonia is absolutely essential to growing corn today. Now, two other quick little points these are just kind of factoids I want to throw out there to help as we go through. Corn that we talk about is primarily an energy support, it doesn't have complete amino acids. I always find it interesting. They said the Indians actually figured out using lye how they could make a complete amino acid profile. So they actually, the Southwest Indians use corn as they could make it work. How they figured out how to put corn in lye, no one's quite sure. Somebody spilled something around a campfire. Soybeans, on the other hand, which is the other big plant that we grow around here, came out of China, and that is primarily a protein supply. So when you look at this, you've got protein, you've got energy. So, and if you've ever raised livestock, you get this figured out real quick. So anyhow, soybeans, corn, wheat is like corn. It's primarily an energy thing. So let's jump real quick at Posey County. 193,000 acres of farmland in Posey County. Okay, and Posey County is just a little diddly thing in the countryside. I've got some they talk about that. But when you guys go out here to the corner and you get on the highway and you drive to Mount Vernon or you drive to Poseyville or wherever, and you go out this T out here at the side of town and you almost get run over anytime you leave town by all the semi-trucks, there is a tremendous amount of corn and soybeans that are going down that highway. Basically, 10 counties around probably are getting sucked down that, primarily this road right out here. 193,000 acres of farmland, so there's roughly about 90,000 corn soybean mix. Posey County used to be a very strong wheat producer. It's not as strong anymore for a lot of different reasons. But you start to go down and say, what do we grow around here? What do we grow? And this is kind of fun. You make the list. So we grow corn, soybeans. Okay, corn. We grow what is called yellow dent corn. Okay, yellow dent corn. You're not gonna eat it. Yeah, yellow dent corn right there. Yellow dent corn is primarily what is grown around here. Interestingly enough, years ago, anybody from Mount Vernon would remember there used to be the Homney Mill down there. And the Homney Mill started a white corn business around here. And so today, if you drive up Highway 41, and you go out there by where North High School is on Highway 41 out north of Evansville, and there are these enormous grain bins out there. Enormous grain bins. How big are those bins, Frank, out there?
370,000.
370,000 bushels each?
Yes.
So anyhow, this guy, that's all he grows is white corn going there, and that's Azteca milling. And so they are a major producer of white corn that's all going primarily into the Latin American market, all the corn chips that are being grown, all that stuff. So that's the white corn is a big deal around here kind of flies under the radar because you drive by a field of white corn, it doesn't look any different than a field of any other kind of corn. It all looks the same. So anyhow, so you got corn. You got soybeans. And soybeans are pretty much soybeans around this part of the world. There's some differences if some places where they grow clear highland soybeans, which are used for tofu, but we don't do that in this part of the world that I know of. I know there's some people like around Lafayette that they ship that over. The wheat that we grow around here, you'll see wheat, that's the plant, that's the crop that's grown in the fall. They sow it they sowed it about a month ago, and it looks like grass. You'll see out there in the wintertime, the grass, and in June it grows out beautiful big fields of wheat. What's interesting to keep in mind on wheat is that there are several different kinds of wheat. The wheat that we grow around here is soft red winter wheat, and what that means is it's primarily used for pastry type milling. It's not a bread flour. It does not have high enough protein. So it's if you go and buy Martha White buttermilk biscuit flour, that's the kind of stuff you get. And so that's if you go find the fancy wheat flour, that's coming from out west, where they grow that stuff way out there. Big crop around here, nobody kind of thinks about it, but I grew up in the sands. So the sands, for those of you who don't know, if you go to Poseyville and turn and go north up that road there, it's an area of real sandy soil, where if you go on up to, like, for instance, watermelons. I grew up around seeing watermelons and cantaloupes being grown. There's a family that's come in lately, and they put up this tremendous business, and they have pumpkins. And so the Fry family farms, I don't know, they're like the primary pumpkin supplier to Walmart of all crazy things. I mean, they're a big deal. That's all that area out north out there. Some old crops that used to be around here, it's kind of fun. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there used to be a building over at the Poseyville Farm Sales place in Poseyville that they referred to as a sweet potato storage. So they were growing sweet potatoes around here commercially. I'd never heard of that. That was, I don't know how long ago. The other one that I find is interesting, if you know the history of Griffin, there's a tornado went through Griffin up there, okay? The tornado finished up in Princeton, and they talk about the fact that it almost blew over the tomato cannery. There's a great big tomato cannery on the south side of Princeton. And then also, if you know this, in red gold, if you go to the store today and buy red gold tomatoes, that's from Tipton County, I believe, up north of Indianapolis somewhere. So they grow tomatoes around here. They used to grow tomatoes around here. So I've always said, you know, you can grow about anything you want around here. It's not a question that can you grow it or not. It's a question of can you sell it there. Then, you know, you go to the livestock side, it's primarily hogs, cattle. You got beef cattle, you got dairy. I'd say around here, dairy is the primary thing. There used to be more beef cattle, but there's very little beef cattle around this part of the world anymore. Turkeys, you don't see them very much because they're all inside barns, but there's some turkey production around here. There's some chicken production. Honestly, most of that stuff goes on a little farther to the east of us here, and up around Washington, Indiana. So there's one functioning operation, commercial orchard in Posey County, I believe. Far of you, I'm not sure if there's any other ones than that. There used to be a vineyard down there south of town, down by St. Wendell, Harley Kaufman. I don't think it's going anymore. So you got that thing. And the other thing around here that I include is timber, because as I said, we've got a lot of timber in our business. We've sold a lot of trees over the years up on our farm. I didn't want to, but we got in with some good commercial forestry consultants, and we've done it, I think, very well. Although I will say the last time we cut trees, it was because of the emerald ash borer, and when you take out one entire 20% of the trees in a forest because some damn bug moved in from across the sea, it just makes you want to vomit. It was awful. Absolutely awful. Where's all this stuff go? Down here, 90% of it around here, I'd say, goes down to the river. When I say down to the river, that's what I'm talking about, this highway going down here. So when you talk about going down to the river, used to be 15, 20 years ago, everything around here was going and getting put on barges and getting shipped down to New Orleans and going to who knows where. I don't know, I wish I knew how much is still being shipped on barges today. I don't think I'm going to guess probably 50% or less, because there are two enormous ethanol plants down there. There's Valero, which is, if you drive into Mount Vernon and you drive and head back towards Evansville, right across from, it's all that stuff that's down on the south side of the road. All that it's South Bend Port. So you've got an enormous ethanol plant down there, and they are buying a ton of corn to go in there every day for ethanol. You've got a soybean crush plant back there, so they're back in there making soybeans. You crush 2 products, you get oil or meal. They're back there doing that, and plus there's a river export port. If you drive back in there, really, it's pretty cool. They don't want people driving around back in there if you're delivering to get to see all this stuff. And then on the other side of the river, downstream, there's a whole other setup like that with an export terminal. It's ADM now. And then you go up towards Evansville, there's another place up there where they're making more ethanol. So we have 2 big ethanol plants in the area. And what's interesting is that, like today, nationwide, 40% of the corn that's grown in this country, I think it's 40%, is going into the ethanol market. Now, what everybody says, oh my God, that's corn that's not being fed. Well, it is a little. It's interesting because there are byproducts that come out of the ethanol business and go back to animal feed. So, yes, there's a lot of energy that's going out into the ethanol market from the corn deal, but the other 60% then is going into animal feed, which then gets mixed in with that protein from the soybean. So that's kind of in a nutshell, and also there's a small wheat mill down there. There's an ADM has a mill down there. So anyhow, so that's kind of the layout of the land, and most of you guys know that. I mean, if you've been around there, what it amazes me, some people, I don't know, it depends on, anyhow. So, what are some of the major trends that I've seen since 1981? You know, I remember sitting in the coffee shop in Griffin 40 years ago and talking to there's one old guy up there, John Beller. And John Beller, I remember talking to him about farming behind horses. He's one of the few people that I've ever talked to who talked about actually as a kid walking along behind a horse. And, there's not many of those people. I thought, man, this guy's seen a lot. And he's seen a lot. And I've come to realize that since 1980, we've seen a lot. Frank and I, we have seen an ungodly amount. So you start to make a list of things that are going on, and 90% of it is technology, the technology of stuff. So this is not, it's kind of a joke, but it's not too far out of line. Like this is inside of somebody's tractor or inside a combine, and these are all the various monitors that they've got going for all the different things in there. Look familiar? I saw a cartoon one time, and the guy said, I can't see out anymore, and that's absolutely true. But and I hope I've got this in the right order. My dear bride helped me out today and put these slides together. It all started right here, I'm going to say. And say, for anyone who knows what that thing is, that yellow bump on top of that tractor right there, that is a GPS receiver. And so there are 20 to 25 satellites up in the sky floating around at any given time. And what it did was that this little device right here gave us the ability to know exactly where we were on the planet of the Earth at any given moment. It all came out from the military, and they used it. It's funny, the military, apparently, the stuff that they use, these things can tell you, this is here and this is here, and they can tell the difference. Well, they didn't want everyone to know how good our stuff was. The military didn't want people to know how good our stuff was, so they put fuzz on it, so to speak. And then you have to go in and you buy services to defuzz it and get it back, okay? So you can be the freebies that they give the barges that go up and down the Ohio River. I guess those guys, if they're 6 feet from the bank, they don't care. But anyhow, they've got kind of fuzzy stuff, and then it goes all the way down to where you can be within less than an inch, and what's even more so is that you can save it and you can go back the next year. So I can go out on my field and I can go out and drive a nail in the ground and come back the next year with that thing and find that nail in the ground out there if I want to, if I have RTK. And what's even more amazing, that's a two-dimensional thing, and now they've even got it with three-dimensional, where we've got elevation, and that's come into play for us. But this thing here gave us the ability to know exactly where things were, which led us into, let me back up a step. In 1980, I remember when the first people started getting computers on their farm. Man, they were doing, VisiCalc, and we were doing all this stuff, and that was a big deal. I remember doing settlements with people that had shoe boxes full of papers. Now, they knew everywhere a nickel was. But, you know, computers, that was a big deal. So it's all this computer stuff. And it sounds silly today, but, you know, I remember Tim Compton, he had an IBM. That was like a big deal. Everybody's like, wow, he's got a computer. He was like, what's he doing? He went to, you know, yeah. So anyhow, but what this does, it starts to give you tools that the whole idea, people said, we're going to use technology as a way to get more and more and more grain. We've got 8 billion people now, we're going to have 10 billion people 25, 50 years from now. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do it? You know, do you just keep throwing more and more fertilizer at the soil? Do you just keep throwing more at the soil? And people are starting to say, wait a minute, there's variation out here. So it's just this world, this is a plant monitor here. And it tells you the population, it tells you the singulation rate, 99%. That means that every seed drop, they want us to do, they talk about a picket fence. You know, there are people that sit down and they say, you want a corn plant here, corn plant here, corn plant here, and they can tell you percentage-wise how much you lose if that's out of whack. It's ridiculous, and that's 10 grand probably worth of gizmos there. And I would guarantee you that probably 80% of the tractors in Posey County, when they're planting corn, have one of those things right there, in there. Everybody does. They're set up to make you drive straight. You know, so, and again, then the next thing, and this is I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to jump ahead here a minute. Yield maps came up then. So we're talking data. That's the big thing. This is yield map. What this is, you're looking at somebody's picture. These are not my farms, but we came off the internet. But what you're looking at is in different colors are different yields. So as you're going through the field with your combine, there's a thing in there that is measuring how much you're harvesting at that very moment. Okay, and then it connects it with that information of knowing exactly where it is on the planet Earth. So it says, okay, 200 acres of corn, and we are at this coordinate. Boom, you've got a map up there. And all of a sudden you see, like, there's an irrigator up there, and the guy must have had a plugged nozzle or something. Something's going on there, because you see his tire tracks there. You know, you can start to look, and you say, wait a minute. What's going on around the edge of these fields? What are all those red spots? That's credit. What's going on there? So we've got this ability to do management, and then it turned into the fact. Then they came back and they said, okay, if we know that you've got a certain kind, you layer that with soil maps, and these are state, and it's a lot more varied. I've got fields where I've had 10 different soil types in each field. So you look at this at a soil map, and you say, what's this ground capable of doing based on the kind of soil it is? Because there's some soils that won't grow doodly, and there's some soils that are very good. You can usually figure that out by looking at what they sell for. But there's absolutely no, but then, you know, the universities and all these people have sat down and they said, okay, if you've got a piece of ground that's capable of growing 150 bushel corn, you've got another piece of ground that's capable of growing 200, why put all the fertilizer for 200 bushel corn over here on the 150 bushel ground? That's a waste, because it ain't gonna do it. It's too drouthy. It floods. There's something going on. So you start layering up this stuff, and so here is what's called a prescription map for fertilizer. So this is one of the outcomes. So these other things were incoming, but this is where it starts the output. So you sit down with your agronomist, and they go out and they pull the soil samples off every acre, and they look at it and they say, okay, well, you've got so much potash and so much, you know, this and that and the next thing in your ground. We know that you can grow this much. Your yield maps are telling you you're doing a good job. We know that this is then how much fertilizer you should put on that ground. And then if everything works right, you go to the co-op with this computer program, you hand them a disc or whatever it is, and they plug it in their fertilizer spreader, and they go out there and they spread fertilizer at a variable rate. If all works well. Sometimes the fertilizer guys have it, sometimes they don't. Now this comes with a price tag. There's no question this comes with a price tag. Do you variable spread your stuff, Frank?
Yes.
I don't, because mine is, I just do replacement. But there's different schools of thought on how to do this, that's what I'm saying. So, but this is the kind of technology that's been growing over the last couple of years. Some people aren't going to like this, but I'm going to talk about it. The other big thing that came about was GMO crops. I remember very plainly the first field of beans I planted that were Roundup ready. We had used Roundup as a weed killer. You took the can, you shook it at the weeds, and they died. They just died. And suddenly they say, no, go plant your crop out there and then go spray this same stuff that you've been killing everything with, and every weed will die. And from afar, you're glaring at me.
10 years.
We've been talking about this. And believe you me, folks, I'm up here spinning this story, and if you all have comments about it, when it gets to the point, say it, because like I said, Laura and I have been talking about this forever. But what this did for us, GMO opened up the door for us to do more with soil conservation work than what we'd ever done before. And that's a whole other can of worms that we get into, literally. Because we suddenly quit using tillage. I screwed up. I've done this talk a time or two before. I've got one field that I farm at home. I think there was an old Indian village there, and I'm talking, 3,000 years ago. And I found this little stone tool down there one day, and I thought it was a hide scraper. Showed it to Cheryl Munson, who some of you might know. She's an anthropologist from IU, and she said, no, that's a digging stick. So that was put on the end of a stick, and this thing is this wide, it's like a little mushroom head. So it feels like a hide scraper. She said, no, that was a digging stick. And I sat down and I said, okay, imagine. And that day it was probably some lady that was out there with this stick, digging around her cornfield, her beans and squash and corn in this little field that was where I now today am growing corn. And imagine how many acres in a day you could do with that stick. Like a whole bunch of zeros. You wouldn't get much done. I had these numbers. I'm sorry I didn't bring with me, but it jumped up to how many acres you could do with a plow, behind an ox. And then they said it was a big deal when they jumped to horses. That was a big technological jump when they jumped from oxen to horses, because horses moved faster. So it like doubled their productivity. People were looking for productivity gains even back hundreds of years ago. And then we went to our dads farmed out there with 40-20s and 3-bottom plows, and plowed all day long, and no cabs. They were more rugged than we are today. Anyhow, on and on and on. But today, to do the same thing, when you think about it, you're killing weeds. This gizmo here, 120-foot wide boom, moving 12 to 14 miles an hour, is doing 180 acres an hour. So that's and one guy sitting up there doing it. Now, that little stick with that stone on it, I don't know what it cost at the local dealer at that time, the stone flint guy. That's probably $800,000 right there. The latest and greatest, that's $800 grand right there. So, it's the cost per acre. It might average out. So anyhow, GMO crops, big deal for us, because it opened up this kind of thing versus being out there with cultivators, and it got us away from doing tillage, which is a big deal. Irrigation, in my case, that's a big deal for us. I took this with a drone, and it's up on my farm this summer. Computers, cell phones. Cell phones are a big deal for us out there. You don't think about that, but it's amazing the information flow that we've got sitting in a tractor cab, and you've got the grain market, you got everything going on, everything you could want in this stupid thing right here, and everybody's got it right there all the time with them. Internet's a big deal for us out there anymore. Smart equipment. I'm disappointed. I wish I had the operator's manual for a 40-20, but I don't. But I'm going to guess that thick, probably 40-20 operator's manual. Here's the operator's manual. Anybody wants to take a look at this is my latest tractor, and about this much of it is how to run the computer at the damn thing. And anybody, it's just absolutely insane the capacity that these things have today. And every piece of equipment has a book like that. So it's just getting more and more, bigger and bigger, on and on and on. A couple of other things. Consolidation of everything out here. I found a list of the tenant farmers on Mumford Farms back in 1920. 40 acres and a mule was what they always said, or a horse, you know. Today, 5,000 acres probably. Is it going? I farm 1,000 acres, and I'm peanuts by today's standards. You know, 4,000 to 5,000, I'd say is probably standard. There are a lot of 10, 20,000 acre farms around the countryside. So, you know, consolidation of that. And what that's turned into is consolidation of, you know, you think of the number of people that were scattered across this landscape out here. That's why Griffin had a school, New Harmony had a school, Poseyville had a school, Stewartsville had a school, down, blah, blah, blah. Because every one of those houses had 5 kids in it. And now, those kids all live in Evansville. You know, all those, nobody lives out here. You know, Bethel Township is where I live up there. Then Wabash Township's the next one north up in Gibson County. They said it's their claim to fame is that they're the only township in the state of Indiana that doesn't have a zip code affixed to it, because nobody lives out there not enough to have a zip code. 15 people live in that township. And there used to be, it was full of people. So consolidation, all the businesses consolidated. You know, the tractor dealers have consolidated. There's one or two. Nowadays, the tractor dealer that in fact Frank's family owned for years up in Poseyville, now it's one of probably 30 stores in a chain. The other store over in Albion, 28 stores in that chain, the Case dealership in Poseyville there. Poseyville's unusual because it still has 2 very good viable equipment dealerships. You know, but they're all parts of these big chains. It's just ridiculous. The grain elevators, same thing. They said there's 4 major meat packers in this country today. 4. One of them's owned by a Brazilian company, and you know, it's just like, you know, everything, it's just selective. Consolidation. Productivity we talked about here. Export focus, big change in my lifetime. Used to be, I couldn't have told you where Brazil was and all, or where, you know, the Paraguay and all these places were. I guarantee you, I can tell you how much it rained. I get a daily weather report that'll give the full weather report of Brazil, because that makes my prices go up and down. It's all right here. You know, it's crazy. We know what's going on because we are part of a world market now. Didn't used to be that way. Livestock businesses consolidated as well. It used to be every farm had a pig on it.
Pig farm did that picture, that last picture.
Yeah. So this is if you look at the very top up there, those are one of the last barns. There's 10,000 pigs inside those barns right there. So, you know, 10,000 finishing hogs in there. That's the way that this business works. And what's interesting is that if you drew about a 1 mile diameter around that farm right there, there's been almost no commercial fertilizer put on those farms up there in the last 15 years, because it's all coming out of those barns right there. So that's the flip side of this. It's very controlled. I've got pictures of them putting on hog manure that you'd be amazed at how exact it is. And it's interesting now, you know, it's a confinement. And
all those hogs are owned under contract by some farm.
Yeah. So another major change in the last 30 years is soil conservation efforts. We talked earlier about GMO crops, and the flip side of this, you know, we use a lot of Roundup out there. We use a lot of herbicides. We use these big sprayers. But what that does is it's allowed us to go out there and plant cover crops, do no-till, and arguably you could say that the waters are better off because of it. Jacob mentioned I was on the board of the Nature Conservancy, and they had a project, Big Walnut Creek up in northern Indiana, and they had mussels in that creek. And I remember talking to those guys, and they said their biggest partner in that project was Monsanto, because they wanted everybody in that watershed doing no-till, because the water coming off those farms was so much cleaner than the fields that were plowed. Now, I don't want to pick on anybody here, because I said there's a lot of different people that farm different ways. But you guys are witnessing one of the most, I think, remarkable side-by-side experiments in farming technique. If you drive by it every day, everybody in this room drives by it every day, and you probably don't see what's going on. One of them's this guy right here. You drive outside of town out here. Frank, how long's it been since you plowed that field out there at the team?
And they're
How many, 20 years?
20 years.
20 years, that farm,
24 years.
24 years, that farm out there at the T, out there where everybody gets on that road, has never had a piece of steel put in it, other than a planter. Never had a piece of steel put in it. That dirt, if there's any carbon sequestration, if there's any soil life, Frank, you've cover cropped that almost that entire time. It's absolutely insane. You go across the road, there's a family over there, happens to be some cousins, and they do it just the opposite. They do it just the opposite. You look at that ground, it's plowed up, it looks beautiful by the old standards. And it's like night and day. And I'm going to say right here, I want to say that both those guys are extremely good farmers. They both raise good crops, they're both profitable. They have very different outcomes as far as certain things go. If you're worried about soils, water runoff, that sort of thing, there's a major difference between those two farms. If you're worried about money coming off of them, I don't know. I'd say probably close. You know, I don't want to, you know, they're good. They're good. Both these guys are growing. Frank does very good, Cousins as well. But anyhow, I just want to point out to you guys, that is probably one of the most in-your-face, night and day, A versus B examples of farming that you could want to find right out here. And so if anybody has questions about that later on here, feel free to ask, and I'll be more than happy to spawn them off on Frank. So, a couple small things, monetized recreation. Everybody pays to lease to go deer hunting anymore. You think, oh, that's no big deal. Yeah. You all can do the math. I have 500 acres of woods up there. We get about 10 grand a year for people to hunt that. We've been doing it for 25 years. I do zero. It's the easiest money I've ever made. And everybody in the countryside is doing that, and I don't charge enough either. But anyhow, so I mean, that's the kind, you know, these are the things that are different now, because it used to be, you just, anybody drive up and say, oh, can I go hunt a rabbit out there? Sure. And it was great. It really was a good thing, and now, you don't do that. That's been a big change. Timber, you know, there's been big changes in the timber industry. I don't want to go too long because I'm running long here. Anyhow, so these are some of the things that are the big changes that I see that are out there. Here's another one. Here's a new crop. This is being grown over in Enfield, Illinois. Solar panels. I'm gonna whip my favorite cocktail party stump question. Some of you guys have heard me ask this question before. Because I hear people say, oh God, solar panels, they're taking up good farmland so people can drive their electric cars or whatever. And, you know, and there are people that don't like that. I get it. That's good farmland. We should be raising food on there. In the year 1900, 120 years ago, what percentage of the American farmland was being used for the solar collection of energy for transportation? Zero. Zero. They didn't have any solar collectors out there. Any other guesses? 1900, solar collection of energy for transportation. Okay, the answer is 30%. 30% because if you think about it, in the year 1900, everybody was trip-trotting around behind horses. 30% of the landscape was being used to grow hay and grain for draft animals. Okay? 1900s, they developed oil. They got the Haber, whatever that Haber. All this stuff happened about the same time. The internal combustion came along, and suddenly, transportation, the internal combustion ran off of oil. And that was the big change. And personally, I think we're kind of going back the other way. Between ethanol, solar out here for solar farms, you know, it's an interesting thing to think about. So, where are we headed? Where do we think we're going? This is some of the things we've been talking about that we are confronted with every day. One answer is more of the same. Just more and bigger. You start to think about, this summer I went to visit family up east. For the first time, because I guess I haven't been paying attention, I've heard people talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. Is that on anybody's lips in this crowd? People talk about that? You hear about it, and it's like, what the hell does it mean? Here's what it means. here's what it means. So, there's a service that a lot of farmers have. It's cloud-based service. Who the hell heard of cloud-based? That's where it rains from. Cloud-based service, where you put all your yield monitors and all your information you're gathering off your farm, you get dumping into this thing called Field Climate. It's this service. It's free. It's like, and you get all these great reports back. It's like, wait a minute. Is anybody else looking at that stuff? I haven't. I'd love to look. Do you use that? I don't use it myself. But I know people that do it. I said, I'd love to see the user's agreement on that. Because I'll bet you, so this artificial intelligence, this machine learning is all about these guys figuring out, think if you have the entire stinking countryside dump in their information. Think about these layers we showed you earlier. Soil maps, yields, how much did it rain, blah, blah, blah. And you start to develop algorithms that say, okay, I know exactly how much fertilizer I can put out there. I know exactly how much I can do. Now here's the thing that's interesting about that. That big sprayer. John Deere just came out with a sprayer. 120-foot wide boom. 32 cameras on that boom. That as you drive through the field at 12 miles an hour, looking down at the crop cover, and can tell the difference between a soybean plant, a cockleburr, these different weeds, and as it goes over, it goes, it sprays it. And it has 2 tanks on there, so it says, oh, if it's this weed, then I need to spray this and this. Go, but it's doing it as you're going through the field. Pretty amazing. They would cut the fertilizer, or the herbicide used by how much? Because no field is completely covered with weeds. Well, not supposed to be, but anyhow. I called up the co-op today. Talked to my guy down there. I said, hey, Eric, I said, you got one of those machines in your future? He said, hell no. I said, why not? He said, it's too expensive. He said, you guys can't afford to pay for that machine. He said, what I would have to charge you per acre to run that machine over your field, you can't afford it. And he said, besides that, I want to sell as much herbicide. I thought, okay, now we're talking. But who's going to be able to afford that machine? Who can afford that? You've got to be enormous, and it's going to get to be, and remember, corn and soybeans are commodities, which means the cheapest guy wins at the end of the day. And all these businesses, the bigger you get, the more technology you throw, and then you spread it over a gazillion acres. 10,000 acres is going to look peanuts, in my opinion, for this kind of farming. Now, where are we going in the future? I think that we're always going to be seeing this kind of farming going on around here for the foreseeable future. Now, there is a whole other world of people who are sitting there saying, hell no, what about organic farming? What about raising more vegetables? What about, you know what I'm talking about. There's this whole other world of stuff out there. Here's my guess, and this is just my guess. I'm sitting in a combine all day long and thinking about this. The big square fields, you're going to see, oh, drones, spray drones. That's another thing we got going on. Anyhow, you're going to see this, and it's going to go to ethanol plants. It's going to go to these things like this. Presuming the politics stay where they are, because ethanol is political. There's your entree. So, but on the other side, I'm thinking to myself, okay, tomorrow morning, if anybody wants to see something funny, come out, because I've got 2.9 acres of soybeans planted in a spot. I just traded combines. I got a new header for it. And it suddenly dawned on me, I don't know how I could get back to that field to combine that 2.5 acres of beans. I can't go across the bridge. Bridge is too small, and there's trees too close to where I'm going to drive in there. It's like so I have to drive everything in there, split it apart, put it all together in the field, knock over 1 acre of the 2.9 acres of beans. And so I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? That might be the last crop, commercial crop like that comes off that 2.9 acres. Right around the corner is another 1 acre patch that I remember as a kid, my dad grew corn on. It's been grass as long as I can remember. What's going to happen to that? I don't know. But it might not be the farm I'm looking for. But you know what? It might be the kind of a farm where if you got somebody who's wanting to grow a truck, 2 acres of vegetables is a pretty damn good patch of vegetables. There's a lot of circles and squares. If you drive from here to Mount Vernon, look at all those little fields down there when you go through the hills. You know, how does that big 120 acre spray? Well, they can turn it off and on. They can make it work. But the point I'm trying to make is I think you're going to see a whole secondary world open up. Possibly. Possibly. If there's a market. Or precision conservation. That's another fun one. You basically say, at what point do I say I can't afford to farm this damn stuff, and the government has programs, they'll come in and say, let's plant this in prairie grasses. Let's do stuff like that. And it makes more sense for the landowner to say, Mr. Farmer, you know what, go focus your effort over here where you can make money, and let me do this over here. And you know what? I'll plant something on there and then charge some yahoo from town to come out and shoot a deer on it for way more money than he should. And why do I make more money? It means the landowner. These are the kind of things that are going on out here. These are the calculations, all because there's more and more and more calculation. I mean, everybody used to walk around and all this stuff was going on in their heads, and now it's all going on in these big computers. So anyhow, what are the secrets if a guy wants to get in farming today? Can a young kid get in farming? Here's one of the interesting things. The average age of farmers in this country is like 62 right now. I'm 64. Frank, you're hell. You know, everybody's like, we're young in this game. So how did young guys get? How does a guy your age start farming if you wanted to? Well, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I didn't know. I'm just picking on you because you're standing. You know, if you had a family, that's how you do it. Can a guy get in farming? I don't know right now. I don't know. When you are talking about the amount of money that's involved, there's a handful that have done it, that have started from scratch and done it, and they worked long and hard, and they put together good operations. They're few and far between, but there are some that have done it. There's a lot that haven't. It's tough to get into. These other operations, can you get into that? I don't know. You know, are there markets? You got to have markets. I've always said that the number one secret weapon for any farmer out here is a spouse with a good job in town. Insurance. Insurance. I mean, that is no joke. Insurance is major. This is the thing that everybody, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this tonight, is that when you start talking about all this, every farmer that's out here in the countryside, every farmer, every wife, every farm family that you run into, you look at it and you think, well, you don't know. You see them, you see them at the fair, and oh, those guys are farmers. They got, money shoes, blah, blah, blah. Every one of them. Every one of us. We want to have a roof over our head. We want to have groceries. We want to have kids. We want to drive a nice vehicle. We'd like to send our kids to college just the same as everybody else in this whole stinking country. And when I see people say, oh, we should have farmers out here raising 5 acres of something, and man, I tell you what I see is there's an awful lot of those folks that starve out after a while. It depends on where they are. Some don't, but a lot do. So what I'm saying, if you want to have that, you got to support those people. You got to support them and make sure that they're having a good living. Because that's what people have got to have to do. It's a business like any other business. I don't care what you're doing. If you're raising 5 acres of good crops, or if you're raising 5,000 acres of crops, you want to have a good living. You don't want to starve people to death. So that's the thing. And so what do people like here in New Harmony? And I know there are people here that want to figure out how to get more local food stuff on. Liz and I had the most amazing experience. We spent 3 days up in the eastern townships of Quebec this summer. If any of you ever get up there, you want to go see it, go up there. It's amazing. They have a culture of food. They have farms. They have these enormous dairy farms. But then they have this scattering of these amazing cheese producers. And it's so cool. But they have a whole culture. It's French. Everything's in French, obviously, but it's a whole different culture up there, it feels like. And they slow down, they eat great meals, they eat fresh food. It's just like everywhere you go, it's just like it all just kind of organically comes together. So you gotta have a culture of it. And if you want to do that, you gotta start supporting your local farmers. And you gotta support your local farmers that are growers, like the ones that come to the farmers market. You got to support the ones like, I love to go to Albion. If any of you know where Albion is. In the summertime, you go up to Albion. There'll be people in there that roll in there, and this is a tip to whoever runs the farmer's market. There was a family up there that does nothing but sweet corn. They're there for 6 weeks, growing the best damn sweet corn. They had pickup trucks full of sweet corn above these two ladies. Go up there and buy sweet corn. There's an old man that sells tomatoes. He's there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You know, it's just like, you know, hit it when it's in, and you go and boom, you get it, and you support those people. And it's great. And it's the best damn sweet corn you've ever had. Best damn tomatoes. You come down here, same thing. Support your local farmers, your local growers. Don't be afraid of the ones, because I'd be willing to bet there's that old expression about egg money. I bet there's some farmers out there whose husbands are maybe driving one of these things who'd be more than happy to have a garden in their back and sell vegetables to people from town. But you got to be able to go on that farm and drive past that big sprayer and not get wigged out when you drive by that sprayer and go back over here, because they might be doing the back 2 acres as a kid's project. You wouldn't believe the amount of sweet corn that's grown in this county by farmers. They give it away. They give it away when we buy our seed corn. They give it every time you drive by a field, you see that crappy looking corn on the edge of the field, 2 rows along the edge of the field. That's sweet corn. And it's some high school kid that's out there picking it to raise money to buy a pair of cleats for the fall. That's who you got to support. You go to the county fair, you buy calves down at the county fair. Best damn stuff you'll ever get. You have adventures in eating, and that's how you get started around here. And I would challenge everybody in this room to start thinking and go out there. I'm going to be critical. I'm going to throw rocks at me, but I feel like there's too many people in the town of New Harmon. It feels like you drive to the city limits of New Harmon, and there's this cliff that drops off. It's the end of the world. It's like, no, there's an amazing world out there. Posey County, there's some amazing stuff out there. Go out there and grab a hold of it, and you'll see that. And that stuff's out there. You'll see a lot of this, but I think that other stuff is out there too. You got to look for it. So anyhow, where are we going? I don't know. Here's a big old combine, guys. Here's just a few pictures. There's Jacob out there in some wheat, picking wheat this summer. That was a good crop. But anyhow, this was the other night. This is the last load of corn from our corn harvest this year. Took that. I think my phone was really dirty, but it made it a neat thing. So anyhow, getting ready for the next season. Already thinking about no-till and that. So that's where I am. So anyhow, I'm done talking. If you guys have questions, anything goes. Anything goes. I have thick skin. I know all of you. I know where to find you. I'll talk bad about you.
I'm going to pop up real fast and say thank you, Bishop, for coming. A wonderful talk, and we knew it would be when we had our heads together coming up with how are we going to wrap up this year. So we give our speakers, as you all know, an honorarium. Sometimes we write a check. Sometimes we do hold cash.
This will go to my favorite charity, and I would say anybody else that wants to make any donation to my favorite charity, the Bishop's Fund for Needy Farmers. Thanks you all.
There are questions. We can certainly stay and do some questions. I also know there's a lot of excitement in town tonight. There may be some folks who need to sneak out. And if that's the way that goes, that's the way that goes. But thank you all for being here. Watch your mailboxes because you'll be getting our 24 brochure. And we look forward to seeing you back here at WMI next year.
Thursday, the 16th, Matthew Graham, former poet laureate of Indiana, will be right here with a poetry reading. 6:30, right here Thursday, November 16th. Also, don't forget about our holiday Christmas party here at the WMI. That is Friday, December 1st. It'll be like 6 to 8 here. Our great event to kick off Christmas in New Harmon. Thanks.
Thanks.